You stand for the pledge. Come on, Gage. One more time, buddy. One more time. If you don't know it by now, huh?
You're a pro.
All right. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nice job. Give me 10.
Nice job, buddy.
Okay, let's stand, please. We're doing calisthenics. And, Mr. Nicholson, Bob Nicholson from, which church are you with?
Impact City.
Impact City will be leading us in the prayer tonight. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Father God in heaven, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here in this place of rule and order, where the citizens of this city come together with faith in their leaders to lead our city to be great and to grow and to be of a service to its citizens that call this place home. And God, I pray that as the leaders of this council, the members of the city employment who are here tonight, our finance and our public safety and others, Lord, who are here tonight, I pray, God, that you will have your hand upon them as they lead and guide and make decisions literally on a daily basis. And Lord, I tonight want to just pray the words of 1 Peter chapter 2:13, where it says, "Make the Lord God proud of you by being good citizens of your community. Respect the authority, whatever their level, because they are God's emissaries for keeping order. It is God's will that you are doing good so that others will follow your example. Exercise your freedom by serving God, not by breaking the rules. Treat everyone that you meet with dignity. Love your spiritual family, revere God, and respect the government." Lord, that is our prayer tonight, as you say in your word in 1 Peter chapter 2. That, God, we will be good citizens that will put you first and our community second. And we thank you for the privilege of living in a free country and being part of the greatest nation on the planet. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, God.
Thank you, Bob. I'm used to calling you Bob, and not, is it Nichols or Nicholson?
Nicholson.
Nicholson. Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. And if you remember, Bob called me Mayor Coleman at the Easter egg hunt. Yeah, Mayor Coleman. Can you believe that?
Forgive me?
Obviously not.
I know there's a little resemblance, but we're good. We're good. Okay.
That's awesome.
Kathy, roll call, please.
Al,
Here.
Hayes,
Here.
Barstow,
Here.
Lee, Picken,
Here.
Walther,
Here.
Carter.
I'm here.
Okay, we have a quorum present tonight. First thing on the agenda is citizens' comments. If anybody wishes to speak, step forward. We need your name, address, and you have 5 minutes to speak. Anybody wish to speak tonight? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
Everybody else first.
Sarah's here to talk to us tonight about our next giant event in the city, Cookie Walk.
Cookie Walk.
Name and address, please.
Sarah McGuire, 321 Mulberry Street, Pataskla, Ohio. I know it's really hard to believe that we were talking about Christmas, but here we are. The plans for this year's Cookie Walk are underway. We're busy. I passed around a flyer that just has some of the highlights on it. I'll kind of briefly go through it. First of all, this is the 5th year already, which is hard to believe. From where it started to where it's grown to is just amazing. So we're really happy about that. The Cookie Walk again will be 3:30 to 5:30, with the parade starting at 6. We found that time works really well. The walk begins at Veterans Green. This year we increased to 400 families, up from 350. And we're also going to have a minimum of a $5 donation this year, hoping that will help meet the demand, because we do run out. We have a lot of people come. It's more than 15,000 cookies passed out. More than 36 businesses and groups participate. We're going to have characters there this year. They always add charm. We'll have princesses and superheroes and the Grinch and live nativity. It's just, of course, Santa. It's always a really good time for families with their kids. New this year, we're going to have a punch card that will be punched at every stop with a hole punch. So at the end, that's an incentive to stop at every business that opens their doors. So at the end, they'll be entered into a drawing if they go to all the stops. So we'll have some really cool stuff there. New this year, we're having an advertisement magazine. The nice thing about that is that the map itself will be the center spread, so it'll be bigger, easier to read, and it gives businesses an opportunity to be seen even if they can't participate. So I think this number is wrong. I know we're more than 20 years for the parade. I'm not sure that's right. But it is free to be in the parade. It'll be lighted parade, so any questions?
No, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Sure, just a quick question. The $25, is that for businesses to participate in the magazine, or is that to purchase the magazine?
The ads start at $25.
Okay.
My apologies. Yep.
And that
So-
book will look like the street fair book?
Yeah. A lot
Basically?
smaller. Yes.
All right.
Yeah. We're thinking anywhere from 8 to 12 pages, which is cool because we have 5 years under our belt now, so we can put a little bit of information in there about how the concept came to be and what our mission is and all of that. So
How many dozen cookies was the first year as opposed to this year? You're doing
we started with 200 cookies and we've gradually increased it. Yeah. It's crazy.
very good.
There are that many people. So
Any other questions? Yes.
Just one more, obviously, some of the safety concerns down there, being that it is at dusk and there's a lot of kids running around. I'm hopeful that you're going to meet with the administrator and talk about potential use of some security or
Yeah.
city police. Definitely be something that I'm just seeing it and watching it happen. It's dangerous down there on 310,
yeah,
having a bunch of people walk around. So
definitely.
something to consider.
Yeah, we had a meeting on Saturday. I've taken all her concerns that we need to bring to BJ and the chief, and we'll start working on those.
Good.
So, yep. Yes, sir.
Do you still need cookies baked for it? Or you guys, is it still the way, it's the way it always was, right?
Yeah,
You get
every-
cookie donations from,
Every stop on the cookie walk is responsible for their own cookies.
that's what I
So,
thought.
yeah.
So 400 cookies
Double
per
stuff
stop.
Oreos, I'm
400,
just saying.
yes, at least. Yes.
Double stuff Oreos, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Cheating.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah,
We're
thank
looking
you.
forward to it.
Thank you.
And my number's on here if there's any questions that come up, so.
Very good.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, any other citizens' comments? All right, we'll move into we have some interviews tonight for some of our boards and commissions, so I will turn the gavel over to our President of Council, Timothy O. Hicken.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have interviews tonight for the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have 3 individuals that were nice enough to include their names or submit their names, and so we'll just go through the typical opportunity for council to ask them any questions. And I'm just going to go by the way it appears in our agenda, and we'll start with Mr. Jerry Truex. Good evening, Mr. Truex.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Pretty good. Could I have your name and address, please?
Gerald A. Truex, 178 International Drive, Pataska, Ohio, 43062.
And we've all had been able to access your application online. So other than that, can you give us a little bit about yourself and why you might be interested in the
Well,
planning and zoning?
I'm 55 years old, and I've been a part of this community my whole life. My parents grew up here, or my mom grew up here. My dad moved here. The Etna Industrial Park was my grandfather's farm. So I have a lot of love for agriculture, but then my dad was also a businessman, so I also understood a part of business. I did move away for a short period of time and lived down in Lancaster while I was coaching football down there with Coach Carpenter and that, and then I moved back to Pataskala. When I came back, I just felt a real desire to get involved. I just really wanted to try to help, or at least be a voice. So I became a part of the planning and zoning 7 years ago. This will be the end of my 8th year. So I applaud the new system you guys have in place because it should get opened up every time and not just you've been here, so you stay here.
I appreciate that. I would kick it open. Any questions from my fellow council people? Anybody? I have a quick one. Can you tell me of a difficult time what was the most difficult thing you ever had to deal with in your 7 years of service?
In my 7 years of service, probably the part of trying to mix emotions with people and try to be a voice of reason, not just a activist on one side or the other.
Okay.
So really my most difficult time is just trying to help people to understand that we're here to help, not to be a burden.
Great. Any other questions?
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you,
thank you
Jerry.
for both your service and your reapplication.
And again, thank you guys too. Appreciate the
Jerry.
opportunity.
Very much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Alan Howe.
Thank you. Good evening. Alan Howe's my name, 4052 Hazelton Etna Road in Pataskala. And just as far as why I want to get involved, I've had the fortune, I guess, to retire last year. And I have a lot more time now to be able to commit. I grew up, but for the last 40 years I was in the hotel industry. Spent a lot of time traveling around the country, living in different places until '99 when we moved here. Once we moved here, it didn't take long, but that first year I was told by my better half, my wife, that we're never moving again. And she was right. We've really enjoyed living here, and we've enjoyed watching the town grow. Margie got involved with the Busters, as you may know, corner store. We had that for 10 years. And now she's got a little more time also. But in the hotel world, I worked 6-7 days a week. Very committed to my hotels. I ran hotels in 6 different states, or 4 different states, 6 hotels, and I just didn't have time for anything except for hotel-related committees, Convention and Visitors Bureau, lodging associations, those type of things. So now that I have more time and I'm not checking in and checking out people every day, I want to give back to this community, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
That's great. Once again, I'll throw it open to any specific questions. I know I have one.
Okay.
We do have 3 people. 2 of them are already on planning and zoning. Out of curiosity, would you at all be interested in a spot on BZA?
I could be interested.
So it's just, and I'll throw that open to council as a possible opportunity. Of course, we all vote our own minds and wherever, but I thank you very much for taking the opportunity to care
Tim?
enough to submit your name.
Just for clarification, there's 2 available spots on planning and zoning and 1 available spot on BZA, correct?
That is correct.
That is correct. If I can just clarify
Mr.
real
King?
quick. We advertised for BZA, and we ended up filling 2 out of the 3 vacant spots on it last meeting. We still have 1 vacancy that's coming due, and 3 people interviewing for 2 vacancies on Planning Commission.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
And third, last but not least, Ann Rogers.
Good evening. I'm Ann Rogers. I live at 10932 Mill Street Avenue. And my husband and I have been residents since the year 2000. And we've enjoyed it. We enjoy our neighbors most of all. We have fantastic neighbors, and we've watched things happen, and we've enjoyed the growth and getting to know most of you I know, but I see obviously new faces. So My husband and I own our own construction company, 20 years, and my first exposure to planning and zoning was basically zoning and getting permits for our company. And so that's my first experience with that. But the interest came to be on the commission when I was observing changes and concerns were happening because of all the growth, and where I live in particular with Etna Parkway and all that. So I just kind of got concerned and interested, and so now I'm just enjoying having a voice and being a voice for others. So.
How long have you been on the zoning, planning zone?
4 years. Yeah.
Great.
Been through 4 directors. Well, on our 4th director. So it's been an experience. And Scott is, I have to say, he's been fantastic. So.
That's great.
And Andy was too.
I tried.
Is there any other questions from anybody specifically for Ms. Rogers? Once again, thank you for your service and for signing up.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question before you move on.
Mr. Mayor?
So we will be re-advertising that one open spot?
Well, and that's something I wanted to talk about, and I was going to bring it up during my report, but we can certainly talk about it now, since we're in this. You know, right now we have 3 people interviewing for 2 planning commission seats. We did advertise for BZA. We had 3 openings there. We filled 2 with 2 applicants that applied. You know, council's desire is either to re-advertise for BZA to see if there's anybody interested and hold interviews again, or certainly pick from a current applicant pool that we have if anybody's interested to do it. So right now we are still 1 short for BZA is what I'll say.
And I don't know how council feels about, I'm trying to think last month when we made motions, but I think it was after all the interviews were finished, and we do have a Parks and Rec, so do you want to?
Yeah. Motions were made, I believe, at the end of the meeting, typically when motions, under the motion section, which makes sense.
So that moves us on to, and again, as council president, I'd be looking for any motions to fill these positions at the motion section of tonight's meeting. If you happen to have come and interviewed, there's no requirement that you stay and watch the entire meeting, but you're welcome to. So just coming and showing the interest in my book was, I'm very grateful for that. So thank you. That moves us on to a Parks and Recreation vacancy, and we have a name submitted to us. It's Mr. McGuire.
Hey, Mr. Hicken, if I can just clarify this as well. The Parks Board's going to have 2 positions available. One is a city appointment. The other that expires at the end of the year is the Licking Heights School Board appointment, and they have been notified that their appointment is coming due as well.
And that's addition to... Or that's
one city, 1 Licking Heights.
Thank you.
So city council is interviewing for 1 position.
Excellent. So welcome, Mr. McGuire.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. Brian McGuire, 321 Mulberry Street. I'd like to just express my interest in the open seat on the Parks Advisory Board. A few years ago, I'm part of the Pataska Lions Club. A few years ago, we were asked to mow in the parks, help keep them open, and myself and some other Lions took the opportunity to give back to the community to keep them open for youth sports and just open use. That actually in myself prompted a career change to where I now work in a neighboring community for their Parks and Recreation Department. And I would just hope to be able to bring any operational knowledge, industry experience to the board. Now for 4 years, I've been a certified playground safety inspector. I've passed the test twice now. So anything I could bring to the table on that would anything I'd share, I would definitely do. I'm very passionate about outdoor recreation, youth sports. My background is in turf, but now I've expanded into more operational of a larger department, of a pretty good sized department. We have our hands in a lot of things, community events, a very active senior center. We're kind of like Pataskala on the cusp of some potential improvements and changes, and just like Pataskala's parks, where there's a lot of blank canvas that's painted. Pataskala, if the voters say yes on the levy, that there will be a lot of improvements coming down the road, and it's a very exciting time, in my opinion.
That's great. Throw it open to council. Anybody have anything specific? Mr. Walther.
Brian, I imagine you've had a chance to look at the current park board recommendation if the levy does pass. Have you had a chance to look at that?
Yes.
And would understand that there's quite a bit of work to be done in the next 4 years if that does pass, basically $1 million worth of improvements to be done. Do you feel pretty comfortable being part of that and being able to help with directing some of those aspects, not only in program but in park improvement?
Yes, very comfortable with that. It's actually nice that the Parks Advisory Board has worked and actually has a working plan to go forward for the next 4 years, and can show the voters, hey, this is what you're going to get, if you vote yes. It's very, very nicely laid out. It'll be very exciting to proceed with that plan. It'll be very nice.
I know I personally enjoyed reading your resume.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very much for your application, and again, motions will be made at the end of the meeting for filling vacancies. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
And with that, I will turn the gavel back over to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hicken. We'll move on to introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Hicken. Discussion and roll.
Al,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Consent agenda passes. On to reports. Just want a quick reminder, we've got 2 things coming up with the CIC. We had our meeting today in Newark, and our next meeting is here in Pataskala. We're hosting it on November 20th. If any of you guys can make it, it's 9 o'clock in the morning in this room, and I would love to see us well represented if you possibly could make that. And also, if you have any, Nate's going to be in. Nate Strum will be in for just a recap on some of the things that we've been doing at our first meeting in November. So if you have any questions or concerns, make sure that you make them known to Nate when he gives us an update, first meeting in November. It's about, okay, I have one more item. I have something I need to discuss with council tonight, and after I discuss it, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Zetz to give us some input on the situation, and then we'll open it up for a little bit of discussion. But as you know, we have a K-9 program here, and it's been very successful. And we have provisions when an officer retires or when a dog retires or if a dog is injured. But we've never had a provision, and we've had something come up to where we have an officer who is moving on to another job, and both the officer and the dog are very active, so we're in a slight predicament on how to proceed, and we want to make sure that if you remember correctly, our last go-around, we had many donations from the residents and businesses and PRA, totaling enough to buy 2 dogs. So all that money pretty much came from donations to buy these dogs. We have money invested in training and such and so forth. And Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this gentleman came to us, this officer, and told us that he was going to accept another position. And we told them, of course, that the dog is, I hate to call a dog or any living being a property, but in this case, the dog is the property of the city of Pataskala. We've invested money. We bought the dog, of course, with donations, but it's still part of Pataskala. The gentleman is in agreement to pay a fair price, which we have set for the dog. And my personal opinion, obviously, is that this dog should go with this gentleman because he is the trainer. He goes home with them. He spends time with his family, and that dog is obviously attached to that owner, and likewise with the family being attached to the dog. And in most cases that you see worldwide, whether it's retirement or whether the officer retires or the dog's retired, they always end up with each other, which I feel it should be. So, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Zetz to give us the. I mean, in a perfect world, I would hope that we could have just said, okay, we want X amount of dollars, and the officer give us X amount of dollars. We go get another dog, and he gets his dog, which is the way it should be, and we move on down the road. But with legalities and all that good stuff, we may have to take another approach. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Zetz now to give us the options on what we can do and to come to a good answer on this.
All right. I always feel like I'm Debbie Downer. It's like, turn to Brian. Why can't we do what we want to do?
Hey, Brian, if I can real quick. Can you talk about, look at this as different steps in the process? What can we do? As the mayor mentioned, this officer, and sorry if I'm talking out of turn here, the officer starts his new job on the 21st.
All right.
So we're really up against a wall right now.
Yeah, here, I guess it's a really, well, we have two steps that I think, and I've thought a lot about this since it first came up, and that is, what do we ultimately does council have to do? What can the city do? And what do we do, like, as an interim basis? I'll start with the former. At the end of the day, is cruel as it sounds, and I don't mean it to be cruel, but the K-9 unit is seen as a piece, it's personal property of the city. I mean, there's no way to get around it. I mean, it just is. It's not like a cruiser, but in fact, it is like a cruiser. And that because the value of the K-9 unit is more than $1,000, our code, which mirrors the revised code, says that can only be, you can't give it away, or you can't just sell it to somebody through some private, arm's length transaction. It has to either be sold via public. It has to be basically sold by a public auction, and that either happens via sealed bid or through an internet auction. Well, I remember way back at the beginning of the year, council, you guys passed a resolution saying you could sell property on that govdeals.com. In some order, that was and so that is an option. I mean, basically that's the option. It'll have to be authorized by the sale. Would have to be authorized by council, and then it could go up for auction. I did before I came tonight. I didn't get a chance to check that legislation, so I don't know how long it has to be auctioned if it was a internet auction. But it'll have to be for whatever that period is. There's an advertising period, and then council can set a minimum price for that.
Like setting a reserve?
Yeah, like a reserve, as you would, with anything else, other piece of personal property that the city wanted to auction. So unfortunately, that's the process that we have to go through. I mean, that's just what the law requires, is what the ordinances require. In the meantime, I know that the officer, as BJ said, is his last day is Saturday the 21st. I don't believe council will be able to authorize that sale, have a if it's going to be, however the auction is going to be, if it's sealed bid or if it's by internet auction, basically have all that done by Saturday. I think that's impossible. So what I was thinking is that we could, if council wanted to allow the officer to, I don't want to say keep because that's not a good word, but continue to board the dog, if you will, until it was actually sold at auction, or the city decided we're going to basically take it and kennel it or do whatever we're going to do with it, to be able to buy time to be able to get that done. I was thinking that we could have a short but very effective agreement with the officer for this interim period that basically where he's going to be taking care of the dog and have responsibility for the dog, but then we eventually will be able to get the canine unit back with us. At the end of the day, I think those are, we don't have many options. We either keep the dog, or if we want to sell the dog, it has to be by the auction process. There really is no option. The revised code has a section in there. People say, I heard these people sell dogs for like $1. The General Assembly enacted a revised code section that talks about an officer being able to purchase a dog for $1, but that's basically if the canine unit's going to be disbanded or the dog is basically no longer of service. So it's not his service days are done and behind him, and the officer then could at that point buy the canine for $1. That's just not the situation here.
Yes, Mrs. Carter.
I guess, I have a number of questions. Obviously, the dog is with the current officer is his trainer and everything else, so I'm not sure what it would be like if you had to, that dog to adapt to another trainer or officer. I'm not sure how that goes.
Chief, you want to speak on that, please?
It's not recommended in the law enforcement community. There's a lot of risks that go with that.
I figured. I guess my concern is it's this Saturday. How are we just now finding about this?
Well,
did they just give late notice or?
No, and listen, here's how it kind of went down, and we had hoped that we could have just made the sale and worked it out between the officer and the chief. Well, when we asked Mr. Zetz to follow up, then we realized that we couldn't do it that way. So we've lost some time trying to find out. We thought it was going to be a simple sell the dog, get the money, and so, but it didn't work out that way. So.
Well, and then with that, Mr. Mayor, I guess my final concern is, and this might sound a little callous, but with the dog and obviously we have had citizens give large donations for us to purchase dogs, and I'm not exactly pleased that we'll just have a fully trained dog leaving the city. So, and especially with us having like 2 seconds to talk about it. So that's a little frustrating.
And if I can, real quick, I believe the officer just gave his notice this past Saturday. So we're getting a week's notice.
Mr. Walther.
Can we get some more details? First of all, which, I guess without naming names of the dog, which dogs are these? Are these the ones that are the newer dogs that we just got and have trained?
Chief, go ahead and fill us in on everything you know and answer those questions.
I don't necessarily, the reason why I'm asking that is I'm trying to decide how close to retirement maybe this dog is. No. How much more use does the city have with this dog? That'd be the first couple things. And then the second part of this was, have we talked to anybody, for instance, somebody who deals with the military, canines? They obviously, handlers move in and out of the military all the time, and they don't take their dog with them. So the question I would have is, how much of a process is that to then have them, have we talked to anybody about that process? So those are my two questions.
Yes, we've talked to Storm Dogs. It's up in north of here. It's where we actually got Nero from. And they don't recommend it, as well as all the local canine handlers in Lincoln County. They're willing to come forward and say, yeah, it's not a good idea at all.
It is one of our newer dogs.
Okay, so that, if I remember correctly, that was like a $8,000 dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that's not probably including all the veterinary services that have been donated or even purchased, and then on top of that, the additional training and certifications. So have you guys put a value to this dog?
We purchased him for $7,500 roughly.
Okay.
All the other stuff, I don't know how you quantify, what the time and the effort of all that stuff is worth.
Obviously, we've had a handler that we paid to do so and train and go through the certification. I know it's a lot of work. I know that firsthand. So, okay.
Suzanne?
Yeah, as the officer, has he considered the fact that he wouldn't win the auction? What if?
Yes.
True. And that's one of the worrisome things to me is that, if he doesn't win the auction, we don't know what's going to happen, where this dog's going to go. I think, to Bruce's point, as far as putting a value on it, I believe the department's desire is to get enough out of this dog to get another and equip somebody else with one.
My thought on that is, if we recoup the price of the dog, we would have to train somebody anyways, another handler. Therefore, I would be okay with just recouping the cost of the dog. Again, we're going to have to retrain anybody, even if we decided to keep them. And to me, I'm hearing it's not worth that risk.
Your microphone. Go ahead.
Well, and on that note, the amount of time that the officer has put into it that is unpaid, that he's used of his own time to train it. I'm just trying to see both sides of it, because I see the value of just the money side of it, but the other side is that clearly he on his own personal time has trained it, has worked with it, and what you would lose in the dog once you separate he from the owner is going to set the dog back anyway. So I'm trying to see two sides.
Hang on, Andy. Mr. Barstow?
So my question is this: when we're talking about, I mean, we can put a value on it. Say we paid $7,500 for the dog, and we've invested this money into it. The officer's invested his time, whatever that would be worth. But the price is what a willing buyer and a willing seller are willing to pay. And what I'm hearing is that this dog is of no utility with a different trainer. So it's not like we're going to have the Fairfield County Sheriff's Department pop up on the auction site, say, hey, we'll give you $6,000 to take it off your hands, because as the chief stopped me, the law enforcement folks are going to say it's not good to mix. My other question is that in terms of this dog's training, is it suitable as a household pet? Could Frida and Freddie, who live in Portsmouth, come up on the auction and say, we'll give you $100 for it, and we want it to be our pet? I mean, is that...
Not if the reserve is higher.
If they're the only, again, the value of personal property is what a willing buyer and a willing seller are willing to come to a meeting of the minds on, not what the reserve price is. So if that's all we get is a I'm just throwing the number, there's $100 to a private purchaser. Is that?
We're putting a reserve of.
Well, if I can real quick.
Sure, go ahead.
Even if we put a reserve of $8,000, $7,500, nobody bids on it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, I think at that point you can deem it as being, having no value. And then dispose as.
Well, I don't know if I go that far. I just
Well, what if nobody bids on it?
Just doesn't have $8,000 worth of
It's just that no one buys it. And it's still our property.
Okay, well then here's okay. Let's say we can't sell it. It's not an item that anyone wants to purchase. And the officer says, well, the officer says, well, I don't want it, or the officer says, I want this dog. Then what do we do in terms of? This is the question more to Mr. Zetz, in terms of what does the officer would have to pay in order for us to legally, and without having Mr. Yost come strolling in here. That's the state auditor, by the way.
He might be governor by then. Who knows?
Well, who knows? Yeah, who knows?
Still don't want him strolling in.
Either way, right? We'll keep it out.
And saying you guys, messed up here and gave away this piece of property.
Well, let me set the record straight. For the officer knows that there's a distinct possibility that there's going to be an auction. He has every intention of purchasing the dog because he wants to keep the dog with himself and his family. They've become attached to the dog. So I think that's a fair statement that the officer.
That he's willing to pay what we purchase price for the dog.
Right.
But I'm like Mr. Zetz. I'm Debbie Downer. I always assume that's for some reason that's not going to happen. We need to decide what we're going to do if it doesn't happen for whatever reason.
Mr. Zetz?
I think, that is a possibility. I think I would wait to cross that bridge when till you get there to see exactly what happens.
Well, I don't want to be rude, but I'm just going to be frank. It seems like we kind of got into this mess because the administration sort of did an ostrich imitation here and just pretended that it was all going to be hunky-dory. And now we have a product sandwich sitting out here, and we need to figure out this has got some moving parts to it. I'm not saying that this officer has bad intentions and he's going to tell us one thing and then not do it. Something might happen. I don't know.
Well, First of all, it had nothing to do with the administration, and we assumed, we knew this gentleman was looking
Then
for.
who, Mr. Mayor, then who did it have something to do with?
Well, let me explain.
Okay, I hope so.
This officer we knew was starting to look for a job. And again, we felt that it would be a simple process of just selling him the dog. So we didn't take it any further until we double-checked with Mr. Zetz, and Mr. Zetz said it has to be done a different way, and that's put a wrench in it. So no intentions, and then, of course, all of a sudden, he does get a job and gives us a notice, and now things have accelerated.
Okay, well,
So,
I'm going to, this will be my last comment. I think I'm going to suggest that we talk to Mr. Zetz about doing a reopen on the FOP contract to specifically deal with canine officers and what they do, and make sure that that conforms with state law and state policy, so we don't have this sort of thing. Yeah, I know we had an officer retire since I've been on council. I think we gave him his service weapon. That's fine. I think we had another officer who did retire, who's a canine officer. Chief, is that correct? And we did. That was a dog who the officer either retired or the dog retired.
the officer didn't retire, the dog retired.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, but
Right.
it's 6 one, half dozen the other. Yes, that's different. That's different.
And we have, as I opened up with, we have provisions for everything but this. We're definitely going to fix it. So.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it.
Yep, Mr. Hicken.
Well, my feeling is, it sounds like, and I'll let everybody speak and speak their mind. My personal feeling is, the dog should go with his owner. We should do whatever we possibly can to facilitate that. And at the same time, the city should make an arrangement with the individual to attempt to purchase it. I realize that there are definitely possible quagmire or possible trouble. Somebody might jump online and say, I want that dog to guard my junkyard or something. I'm willing to pay this. But I think we cross that bridge when we come to it. My gut feeling is that a service animal that has been trained to respond to and spend a large amount of time with one individual, if that individual is willing to pay what was paid for that animal, then that's just, I would hope that we move towards, that would be my preferred resolution. So.
Hang on just 1 minute. I want to make sure before we go round again. Mr. Powell, do you have anything?
Oh, I agree with Mr. Hicken. I think we should do whatever it takes to make sure that the officer keeps the dog, because the way it sounds, if we put this dog up for auction and for some reason nobody buys it, we're stuck with a dog that we can't retrain. I don't know. There's just so much to take into consideration, because it is, you have to tie a little emotion to it. There's a family that's attached to this dog, and you have a dog that's attached to this family. So, I don't know. This is kind of a tricky one.
Mr. Kane, do you have a comment?
No, let council go, and then if nobody covers it, I'll bring it up.
All right. Mrs. Carter, back to you.
All right. I'm going to sound like I'm irritated that we have put this investment in. Our community needs these dogs. We've gone to this degree to train the dogs, and then on a flip we're saying, oh, take your puppy. That ticks me off. So I certainly hope that we're going to not put ourselves in this position again, that we put measures in place where we don't lose an investment like this. If this was somebody leaving, taking a car or something, people would be up in arms about it. I realize the dog would be probably of no use to us if it were still here, but that's beside the point. The point is that we got here, and we're hearing about it now, and we've never done anything about it up till now, and that's why I'm irritated.
Well, we've never had the situation where an officer left.
But we're all intelligent individuals who should think forward about these type of things.
And we will get reimbursed for the dog, so it won't be just giving the dog away.
That's beside the point.
I know.
Hours,
Sure.
time,
I realize that.
everything else.
Mr. Walther.
Okay, so I've got two questions now, anyhow. The first one I would ask is, where this officer is going, do they have an active canine unit?
Yes.
Would that municipality be willing to purchase this dog as a team? The way I look at handlers in the military, at least, they were a team. They would move from duty station to duty station together. So is that a possibility for this municipality to then take purchase the dog from Pataskala as a canine unit and have the dog move with this officer.
To my understanding, that's not an option.
So there is no way they're going to use this dog. So the next part of that question is, we know that they will not use this dog for a canine unit if the dog were to leave Pataskala.
No, in fact, I'm pretty sure they would.
So, okay, so they're having their cake and eat it too, basically.
Right.
So that, to me, is even worse, this situation. So my second question, or second point that I'd like to make, this dog is what, 24 months old, 30 months old?
18 months old?
No, he's about 4 years old.
Is he 4? We've had him for 20, basically.
We've had him for 2 years.
We've
on the
had him
street,
for 2 years.
And he was 2 when we got him.
So, this isn't a dog that's been with this handler for 6, 7, 8 years. I'd say 2 years, and I don't want to sound callous, but at the same time, this is a working operation for Pataskala. We purposely have 3 dogs for a reason, so we can cover all shifts. I mean, you've made that point very clear. We're going to go through a delay and if this dog were to leave, or even if stays. Because my understanding is for a dog handler to move on to a separate dog handler, it's an intensive training class, then it can be done. And whether they say it can or can't, it can, and it happens all the time in the military. So, because we lose handlers, just the same as we lose dogs in the military, unfortunately. So it can be retrained. It just is an intensive process if we decide to keep the dog. And if the dog were to leave, we're going to go through this process of buying a dog, recertifying a dog, retraining a dog. That'll take years. That took, 18 months, essentially, for us to get this dog up and running? So, this is a bad situation, obviously, and one that we have two more potential situations that we need to, as Ms. Carter said, we need to look ahead and make sure that we have these things already, that we can do the best we can to prepare for this.
And we have.
Okay.
I mean, since this came up, we've absolutely talked about contracts with the officers.
Okay.
Anybody else? Mr. King, did you want to tie anything up?
Nothing. I guess, yes, just one thing. So, Brian, if council decided to let the dog temporarily be housed by, fostered by whoever, the current handler, should that be done by a motion, or should it just be understood?
I think it could be done by motion. I think it probably should be done by motion, so there's a clear directive, and then I do.
With a time frame, if they so choose?
Yeah. Well, I think you could, as people were talking, I was trying to draft up what I thought maybe the motion would look like later in the meeting, but, if it's I don't know if it's a definite time frame, but at least until it was either sold by auction or the city demanded it be returned. So then if it doesn't sell, I don't know what, because you think if it could be like anything else, and I don't mean to seem callous or heartless, but if it's not sold at whatever the reserve is, you could always put it out there again for another auction at a lower reserve, and then maybe it is only worth $1,500, and then someone does come in and buy it for $15,000, or you actually get a bidding war at some point in time, so you could do that, but. Yeah, I think I would do it by motion, and I think fostering that's kind of the word that popped into my mind, because that's probably what he would be doing. And I think that's also them subject to an agreement that we could put together with the officer that would be acceptable for the administration. So we protect ourselves with respect to liability and all the other fun things we get to worry about.
That he would feed and take care of
Right,
it and accept
right.
that liability
Right.
and all that
Yeah,
kind of stuff.
the officer the officer has custody of a piece of city property. The officer should indemnify the city if for both injury to the dog, and if the dog, heaven forbid, injures someone else in some fashion, because the dog won't be functioning, although it's city property, it will not be functioning as a city asset if it's at the officer's house.
Right. And I mean, that's just an option that you don't have to actually do that either. I mean, we could, and the city could just put onto it.
We'd have to board it.
Yeah, you have to board it.
I assume our two options are boarding it or allowing this officer to take it home and care for it.
Yes, sir.
And Jamie, quick question, if you don't mind. Insurance-wise, is this something we've checked with our insurance agent?
First I've heard of this.
Okay. So I just would hope our insurance agents would be really comfortable with this. It is an asset. It is a city asset being held by a private citizen at that point.
Certainly have to see how the insurance would be covered, and what liability, I assume it would still be covered under our,
Worried about it being in private hands.
no doubt about it,
So,
with
yeah.
commands.
Yep.
But remember, it's in private hands most of the time anyway. So.
But they're employment.
Representing the city.
Yeah.
Right.
They're an agent.
And
I mean,
as
they're in
of-
an
as of
agent
the-
situation.
As of the 21st, he won't be an employee. So
Right,
yeah,
or
we
an
need to
agent,
cover ourselves.
correct.
That's it.
Okay, any other discussion? So you have some rough language, so I can give that to the president when it's time for motions?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll move on. Mr. Hicken, you got anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Mr. Zetz, got anything?
I've done plenty talking tonight.
Okay, Mr. King?
I have a couple things. I already covered the BZA appointment. I was going to bring that up about how council wants to handle, maybe re-advertise and interview again, or go from my current applicant pool. A couple other things. Tomorrow, Nate and I will be meeting with the fire chief. It's the first monthly meeting I'll be having with the fire chief. We're reaching out and doing that. So Nate's going to join us to talk about water. On Thursday, we have training for our new auto call system. So after Thursday, we'll be able to get it launched and get people signed up for it. Another thing I wanted to mention is the Battle for Broad Street. That just happened this past weekend, and I know historically we have looked at changing the sign out front for whoever wins. But if the same team wins a couple years in a row, it stays the same. There's no fanfare. There's nothing. So I would encourage to potentially start a tradition of inviting the winning team, and I know it could get crowded in here for a short period of time, to council to recognize them, and also potentially the mayor do a proclamation to the winning team each year congratulating them on the victory. It certainly is a community event. The community gets behind. People get excited about it, so something to think about. Kind of struck me today is I saw on Saturday morning that Licking Heights won again. Drove in this morning, looked at the sign, said Hornets. Well, there's no, if Watkins would have won, we would have had them here to change the sign, do all that stuff. But with the same team winning, come and look at the sign. I don't know what else you would do. So something to think about. I'd encourage it for moving forward, maybe even potentially for this year if there's any desire to do it. I've talked to a couple of council members about having another budget meeting. We had our first one last Monday, and I know there continues to be some discussion that needs to occur. Looking at it, right now, without any additional budget meeting, the third reading of the budget would occur the first meeting in November. We certainly have time built into our schedule. It's the beauty of our schedule. We have additional time to do it. If council wanted to do an additional meeting and do a second reading tonight and make amendments, the budget would just sit for a fourth reading, which we have time to do. If council wants to have that, we may want to look at the second Monday in November, or whenever council would desire to do it. Certainly talk about it tonight, though, so we can get something scheduled and get it on the books. The last thing I want to talk about are the cable franchise. There is a thought in the community that there's only one cable station that is able to provide service to the community. Looking back at past legislation, best we could find that Kathy dug up was 2002, the city entered into a non-exclusive franchise agreement with Time Warner to provide cable to the community, non-exclusive. In 2008, it appears that the ORC had changed some of their regulations, and the council passed by motion 3 cable franchise agreements, or not by motion, by ordinance with an emergency to meet the ORC deadline for UVerse, Time Warner, and Insight, I believe. I talked to Brian about this, and there is nothing in those current ones that says that it's an exclusive agreement. So as far as my understanding is, there is no exclusive agreement for a cable company to provide service to the community. What there is are franchise agreements with cable companies that they will pay 5% of their total revenue derived from the community to the city each year, and we do collect that on an annual basis. So and I'll turn it over to Brian again after I say this. So my reading of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that any cable company could provide service in the community if they so choose. If they so choose to invest in getting the equipment here to do it, and also entering into these franchise agreements with us. And we had a chance to talk about this. So, what's that?
Yes. No, I mean, it's true. I mean, that's, BJ and I took a look at that, and actually what he just said is, from everything we could tell from the legislation, that's absolutely accurate, and that's where it stands. Now, whether or not multiple cable providers are here giving everyone cable, that's a different question, but are they able to, from what we can uncover? Absolutely they could.
So do we reach out to them and let them know that?
Absolutely.
Good. Hallelujah.
And Mr. Mayor, what I would suggest also is that we put this out on our various social media outlets, because there is a perception in the community that Spectrum, which was previously, I don't have cable, so I don't know.
Insight and Time Warner, now they're all one.
Whatever it is, that there's an exclusive franchise that a mayor long ago in the midst of time received some sort of kickback for. This is what I'm hearing. That's what people are telling me. That's what happened. Which I don't believe that. I don't promote that, but that's what people believe. A lot of people believe that that's what happened. So maybe we should disseminate that. If you want to have Ed's Cable Company come out and hook up your satellite dish, you knock yourself out.
No doubt about it.
But I guess my other question is what's to prevent a cable company or one of these companies from coming out here and setting up shop and starting serving customers without paying the 5%? Because the 5% is by an agreement between the cable company and the city. What if they?
Well, I guess it's not like Ed's Cable Company. Sorry, Ed cannot just come out. I would think only the cable companies that we have these the fee agreement with were the ones who could actually come out, because that was all set up by statute in 2008. So Ed's probably out of luck. It was like Time Warner, AT&T, and I forgot the third one.
It was Insight.
Okay.
It'll all be one probably by the end of the.
Yeah, but they say they're non-exclusive. So if it's a non-exclusive.
But I think you have to actually have. I think you have to have agreed to that fee in order to.
Okay.
So it really is non-exclusive. Anyone could come in and enter into one of those fee agreements with the city. But I think until you do that, you actually aren't allowed to. Just come in. That's the way I read them.
Good, Carter.
Out of curiosity, we had those agreements with those companies. Are they still under that agreement since they've been bought out and absorbed? And first, Time Warner bought Insight, and now Spectrum bought Time Warner. So is that agreement still in place then? How much do we get from it?
Yeah.
What we say it was like $32,000 a quarter.
A quarter, yeah.
About $30,000 a quarter.
About $130,000 a year from those. In correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but regardless if you're bought out, that agreement would still ride with the new company.
I would think so. I mean, I think those would survive any mergers or assignments.
The other reason why I know they survive a lot longer is that we get checks for Lima Township and Pataskla. So Lima Township must have done the similar right-of-way agreements with the company. So I get like 2 checks.
Interesting. Okay.
That's why your cable bill's so high.
Well, I wasn't the mayor at the time, and I don't have cable. So, anything else on this subject?
I doubt it.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Just a quick question, and we've talked about this, BJ, a little bit. The steering committee for the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
Just wanted to, in the development committee, we talked a little bit about it, and there was some confusion on when that was going to happen. Is either you or the mayor, could you guys speak to that?
Certainly. My goal is to come to council by the second meeting in November, seeking authorization for a contract with a company to do the RFQ. So I would recommend that same meeting, officially establish the steering committee, and let's get it started this year.
Is that, I'm kind of asking just to make sure we're all in the same place. I had actually gotten asked by a couple people that I believe were nominated, just when that was going to happen.
Well, and we're very close. We had one gentleman that ended up on a board or commission, I do believe, so that we're looking for one more name. So, but everybody's just in the holding pattern. But we have all but one.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Thank you, BJ.
Thank you,
Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you, Mayor. You have a copy of my report. The only thing I want to point out on the agenda tonight is the legislation for the income tax allocation rates. They match what's in the budget document. It's just, we have to go through that annual process, so it's on for first reading tonight. That's all I have.
And thank you for the update on Rita and that copy of that letter. I received no calls, so I don't know when that letter actually went out, but.
It went out in the mail, so I'm imagining they'll start hitting mailboxes this week. Start getting calls.
Thank you for that.
No problem.
Any questions for Jamie? Very good. Nate?
I would just comment on the first reading of the ordinance tonight about increasing the residential capacity fees that was vetted through the utility committee.
Except for your face.
Except for you shaved your beard off.
You shaved.
The 14-inch beard that you shaved off the front of your face.
Wow.
No, it's okay. I couldn't focus. What did you say earlier?
His doctor told him he needed to lose 10 pounds, so he
Just got his beard out.
shaved. Okay, thanks, Nate. Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of construction items to point out. Taylor Road culvert and Columbia Road culvert. In the Columbia Road, some material lead time, and the construction schedule will be the end of the month to start both of those. I'll go through council and community update.
Anything? Yes, ma'am.
Status on Main Street.
The residents that I've been working with, I've got very little response from. Mr. King's been with some residents, I clicked on the spot.
No, it's the same.
I had a neighbor ask me if he could pull the stake out of his yard because he was tired of mowing around it. So I told him no.
I would ask them not to at this point.
Okay. They just want to know why they've been there a while. So I just want to be able to say we're moving forward with it. Are we just at status quo, or are we? I don't know. I mean, is it just like not moving, or is there
No,
something that's happening?
It's trying to get agreement from residents to grant us the easements to allow it to happen. Without the easements, we cannot bury the electric lines.
Okay.
How many are left?
10.
Isn't that about all of them?
And they just don't want to do it, or they just don't want to do it?
It's been a struggle to get them, correct?
There was a resident near the beginning that rallied, I think, some folks to not signing, and we've had a difficult time overcoming that. Although we've made some changes to reduce the size of the easement and change some language, we're still working.
So how long do we let this go on?
Till we get the easements.
Well, I realize that, but if somebody just says, I'm just not going to give it to you, then what do we do?
Probably keep the electric lines overhead. I mean, without the easements, we can't bury the electric lines, so those are the options. Or, what's that? Or you can always go take.
You could always go with the eminent domain appropriations.
Property, so.
Beautification project, I don't believe that we could.
I have to look into it. It's still a public purpose.
Which is certainly not a desirable route to go.
Right.
No, but how long has this project been going on? 2 years? And we still don't have it finished? I hate to say this, I've been in this community 40 some years, 42, and I just want that constant comment to go away, where we don't finish. I mean, people just don't believe we finish projects. People don't think that we do. Take something. I mean, we are so close to taking something and just finishing it and making it beautiful. And I'm just tired of hearing, well, you know, it's Pataskala. I mean, we don't have the poles down. We don't have the project complete. And that is the heart of the city. So I want it to be, and I know it's not like you don't want it done. I want to be able to say we wrapped it up. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Well, so what do we have to do? Do we have to send out a fish or cut bait letter to these folks? That either it's, I mean,
when are we going to, this is a project we spent a lot of money on, it tied up downtown for months, and I completely agree with Mrs. Hayes. I don't live in that part of town, but it's, there it is. It's just sort of, we need to finish it and do it. And so what do we need to do? Maybe Mr.
Probably is
Zetz?
time to send that signer, it stays.
Did we not do that with some of the folks in the Mink Street property? Don't we have legislation that's
Yes, we do.
tabled? Isn't it the same type of situation?
It's not, the Mink Street property, we are forced to do that through the ODOT process, that we must do the appropriations. We can certainly proceed with doing that on a local level for Main Street if we choose. I was trying to take a better approach than what the ODOT process is, to be honest with you. It hasn't worked, so it's probably time to send and say, signer, they stay.
I guess I wonder if there is any, I assume you guys, I've talked to you guys about this, back and forth, and you've made righteous attempts to get to talk to the people. But I don't know, the last I remember hearing about this at the street committee was, maybe we need to have another public meeting close to where they are, and I don't think that happened. Now, does that mean that we give up, or does that mean that it's going to take elbow agree? Not that you guys aren't working, I do not wish to give that impression, but to jump from one to it's time to send the fish or cut bait letter, because I too see it all the time, and I too get comments from the citizens. Hey, when the heck's that going to be done? And it kind of goes, hey, when the heck is Mink going to be done? And you say, calm down, be patient. So, I don't know. I saw your hand up, Mr. King. I think maybe.
Then I'll go.
But I wonder if there's not. I don't know if the street committee can look at it again. I don't know if the street committee can hold a meeting. I don't know if you want. I'm willing to walk down there and knock on every door, but I don't think it's going to make any difference, because essentially you guys have already done that, correct?
Mrs. Carter, I'd like to get all
What
comments.
is is there any specific reason that they name that they don't want to? Is it
Granting their property to allow, essentially a public utility to come in and install their stuff.
Is that a permanent easement or just?
It is.
It's permanent easement.
It is a permanent easement.
Is it a substantial part of their front yard?
3 or 4 feet outside of the right of way, so it's really creeping up into their front yard.
Originally, it was about a 10-foot easement that AEP was asking for. That's when we went back and got that narrowed down to the pedestals, which those are about a foot.
And if you look at where the stakes are down there, that's the right of way, so you're looking at 2, 3, 4 feet behind those, so it really is getting into people's yards. To do it, public meetings, we can certainly try again. We've had 2 for this project, and they've been very sparsely attended.
Were both those held here?
Yes.
And then just one more follow-up with that. Is this something that is left over from the whole Stantec debacle?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
Will you be boring underneath, or will you be just cutting right into their yard?
We're going to bore parts of it, some will be open cut.
The concern is, from what I've heard, the concern is granting a permanent easement of their property that AEP could go into at any point then. They're basically, I hate to say giving up part of their property to do it, but they're granting a permanent easement for a public utility to go in there.
Still own it,
and
but
do as
the
they
electric company could go in there anytime they want
Correct.
and do work.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there a provision in the contract of any sort that AEP would repair what they've done? Like, so.
AEP would certainly repair whatever they do.
Okay.
We didn't make any decisions here. What's our next step? We have to try to work on this. Yes. sir.
A suggestion I would make is to have the street committee meet with them again. Let's meet down there and talk to them about it. My experience with burying electric lines is typically thought of as a really great thing, and there's a lot of aspects that I'm sure you guys have shared with them to be a really great thing. People usually beg to have these electric lines taken down out of sight and taken out of their, overhead issues. So if we could just potentially meet with some of these, I think the street committee can meet with them, with BJ and Alan, and really try to reiterate that with them. I'm willing to do that.
Okay.
Because I'm with Suzanne. We really, this one, we should be able to get this one done.
So we'll bring it up in the next street committee meeting.
We will not, we'll bring it up and we'll schedule, if it's council's pleasure, we'll go ahead and schedule a meeting.
I think get it scheduled.
Get it scheduled.
At the theater? Downtown? Can we have it there, or do we have to
I'll
have
have it where they want. They want
Have it on my
cookies and
front
donuts.
porch.
Having somebody's
You want to
front
have it on my
yard.
front porch, you
I
can
would
have it
rec-
on my front porch.
I would recommend
Or
doing
mine.
it someplace like that, just not to exclude any.
I
Got
understand.
dogs though, so,
That's fine.
All right.
Do
Very
whatever.
good.
Want to make it accessible to everybody.
Yeah, I'm speaking for the street committee, but I think
That's
we're all on the
perfectly
same
fine.
page.
I think
yeah.
that's the way to go.
I agree. I do not think we should go in and do anything by force.
Yep.
Period.
Let's try again. Very good.
Thank you.
I've got just a couple quick questions for Alan.
Sure.
Okay. So the streets program is done. The 2017 is done, correct? Any punch lists? We're all done? Okay. And you probably have at least put together what you think is a pretty realistic savings for this year?
We're still debating some quantities and such, but yes.
Okay. Is it near what you thought it was originally?
More.
Very good. So what I'd like to suggest, we've stated that we're going to spend $600,000 a year on the ramp. If it's more, I'm not going to throw out any numbers, but that means it's $100,000 plus or minus. Okay, that's good. That's great, Alan. I just don't want to take up any of your contingency that may be agreed to for something else. What I'd like to, as we go into this budget talk, I'd like to bring this up as potential additional monies that are definitely needed for ramp projects or drainage projects, and look at that money to capture that. Unless, Alan, you have it, I see in your report you've got a couple of overages, slight overages, that you want to use some of this money for, which I believe, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I think that's what you want to try to do.
Yes, I mean, in reality, there's a number of points of savings. I envision just going back to the bottom line for
Okay, so if we are to have another budget meeting, could we address that as kind of what our savings are, what you want to earmark them for, and then if they can be a large $100,000 used to, take care of some of these drainage issues, that's kind of what my thoughts are, at least, or at least to earmark that.
Mr. King?
And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, to do such a thing would require an amendment to this year's budget to reduce.
Because
and then to
even though we aren't
increase.
spending it, it's been appropriated, so that fund balance has already been reduced.
This would be one of those allocation ones that you do at the end of the year, correct? Where you take it down here and then we have it in the budget for next year.
The only concern I have right now is the timing, since we have that, we can't amend it on the third reading without going and trying to avoid having a December mid-month meeting.
Well, I think we're.
It would just be carried over, appropriated.
But we'd have to do a supplemental then in
Right.
18 for it, as opposed to
So,
having a part
so
of
there's
the
two
permanent
options
budgets.
here. There's two options here. One is to reduce it this year, make it part of the permanent budget next year, or just let it roll over as far as carryover and then appropriate it next year as a supplemental in 18 when we identify where to use it.
I'll take whatever you guys want to do, but
I think that's the better way to do it.
Okay.
The second one?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly a better way to do it is a supplemental in 18.
Awesome.
Anything else for Alan?
I do. Just another quick question. Out on the Mink Street Phase 2 project, you've got Columbia Gas has started in September on their relocation. Are they moving forward with that? I was out there and I'm not seeing a lot of evidence. Have they been doing that? Have they been moving forward with that?
I have not heard on that one. With them or AEP.
Okay.
They're waiting to remove trees. We've got a tree removal meeting tomorrow. So and they'll start.
Mr. King?
What I will say, though, the project is certainly on schedule with all utilities and design and acquisitions and everything. So it's still on schedule and construction in 18.
Great.
Very good. Anything else for Alan? Yes, ma'am.
Alan, have we made any progress on the priority report for the drainage projects, like what's severe, compiled them all like we talked about a couple months ago so we can see in front of us, because we need to start really not just kind of pushing that behind us. It is a huge problem. So, and like Mr. Walter said, we need to make sure that if we have additional funds to allocate, that they're going towards something that we didn't think we were going to be able to get done before. And I would like to see a list of those with and maybe the severity of each. Numbers would help, for me anyhow.
Mr. Barstow?
Any contact, Mr. Haynes, with Mr. D'Onofrio?
Yes, Mr. Lee and Jason and I met out there with Mr. D'Onofrio and another neighbor.
Okay.
His concern is that there's standing water in the ditches is the concern. We walked, Jason and I walked the area after the meeting. Supposedly there were some plans put together. I have not seen those plans. I have reached out to Stantec asking for any information that they have, whether that be plans or even survey. What I'm told the plan suggested was putting an under drain beneath the ditch out there. And from walking the site, that doesn't look feasible to me, that there'd actually be an outlet for that water at that elevation. Looking at other ideas, but for now, we did meet with Mr. D'Onofrio, and we are researching.
Okay. Thank you.
And I will say that's going to be an item for the October 23rd street committee meeting.
It's on the schedule.
Yep.
Or the agenda.
Very good. Chief Brooks,
I have nothing tonight, sir.
any committee chair reports? Oh, I'm sorry, Scott.
Forgot about
Sorry.
Scott.
Scott,
Sorry, just skip Scott.
quiet as a church mouse over there. Sorry, Scott.
Two things, the comprehensive plan, we put out the RFQ, deadline was the 10th, we have 5 responses to that. We compiled those today, and staff will be reviewing those RFQs to determine who we want to interview to consultants. And also subdivision regulations, 3-step process. The first was actually creating the regulations, 2 was reviewing the draft, and 3 would be pursuing the code amendment process. We're now on step 2. That was presented to Development Committee this evening with a current draft of the regulations. Staff is going to review that to make sure we have everything right before we begin the process. I know Development Committee is 2. It was also recommended that we send a copy of those regulations to council as a whole, and I will do that. And then I will do, as part of that, emailing that out, I'll give kind of a quick synopsis of what this is, the direction we're going, and some of the basics that Development Committee has heard as we've gone through this process. And I believe we're looking to have a final draft back to council or to the Development Committee rather, at the second meeting in November. So as part of that, we'll have a deadline in that email of, I believe, November 10th to have comments back to me, so then I have time to make the tweaks. If there's any questions, I can contact you and ask you to clarify. And then we'll have, hopefully, the final draft to Development Committee, second meeting in November, so then that we can begin the code enforcement process from there. I have to answer any questions.
Well, I appreciate you getting me that information last week. I was able to meet with that gentleman and give him the food truck information, and it was a very successful meeting. So,
Good. Glad to hear that.
thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Anything else for Scott?
I have one.
Yes.
There. Scott, in your report, you talk about development monitoring, and you talk about some of the problems you're having out in the field. Can you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
There's some that, and to be quite honest, anytime a development goes through the process and they get to construction, there's always a process of policing it to make sure that they're doing things per the plan. Erosion and sediment control is in place, some of those things. So we're constantly following up with the developers, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. There was a couple developments that they were doing things contrary to the plan, so we've worked with them to address that, to say, you know, you either build a plan or here's the process to amend it. We're also working Public Service Department and the inspection services we have, along with the code enforcement officer, to look at ways to, lack of a better word, give teeth to the inspector who's out in the field watching these things occur, who constantly reminds them of what needs to be done, and it might take 4 or 5 times, nothing happens. At that point, we're going to have the inspector contact zoning inspector, who will go out, witness the issue, and then issue a violation letter at that point. So we're trying to provide teeth, for lack of a better word, to something that we can get them to follow the rules and follow the plans that were approved.
Some of that happens pretty fast. Are you able to act fast?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, we're pretty responsive. Having the inspector on site during the construction activities truly helps, because there's reports generated as a result of that. It's just the reminding them, you need to do this, you need to do this, and that goes on for weeks. That's no longer going to be tolerated, and after a few warnings that this needs to be done, the zoning inspector will be out and identify the problem and issue a violation.
Mr. Walther?
Yep. So our consultants, Prime, are they not understanding that are they first of all not given that authority to or direction to call you guys immediately? I mean, it sounds like this is some serious stuff going on that you're frustrated with. They're your eyes and ears out there, correct?
Correct.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm pretty much managing that. So the challenge is, it's not the public improvements themselves. So, you know, if the sanitary sewer, water lines, storm sewer, roadways, we don't have to accept those if they're not down to our standards. So if there's something that's going wrong there, we tell them, hey, we accept that, or we're not going to accept it, so they're going to have to do it.
Is this like mud on the streets type of thing?
Yeah, it's the erosion control things, something, the things that we really can't quantify or have a way to make the contractor that's working for the developer adhere to. That's the challenge that we've had, so that's why we've had this frustration a number of times in a lot of different subdivisions. So finally just came up with this, that, hey, here's how we can get teeth in this, here's how we can make things go along.
Are you guys, so most of the developers, I mean, if you called them directly, and I know that they're on the plans as they're the owners, right? If you call them directly and let them know that their contractor isn't doing something right, have you found that they're not responding, or is it just the contractors are hard-headed, so you're going to have a hard time getting them to do what you want, but the developers, I mean, are you guys contacting them directly by chance?
When it gets to that point, yes. When the violation letter is issued, it does go to the developer themselves. Our thought is going through the chain of command that we've attempted to have the person on site who's tasked with fulfilling these responsibilities actually fulfill their responsibilities, and then if it's not done at that level, the violation letter is issued, and then the developer gets a copy. So then that way it's shown, we're talking to your guy on site who refuses to do this. This is why you're getting the letter out. So it's following the chain of command.
Mr. King?
Well, what I'll say is certainly developers are hard-headed. You're right.
Contractors.
Contractors are hard-headed.
Contractors.
And, you know, dealing with developers, we certainly have had time after time calls, violations, going up the chain of command. It gets better for a few weeks, falls back off. You know, so it's constant cat and mouse game with them. And, you know, as far as public improvements, we're on those. You know, I have no concerns about the public improvements. We're going to be.
It sounds like it's mud on the streets.
It's all the erosion stuff.
Erosion stuff.
Yeah.
It's your dust control,
Yes.
that kind of stuff.
Which
the nuisance
ultimately
stuff.
will be our problem if it's not
Understand.
enforced.
Okay. I was thinking it was I thought it was your public improvements you were having problems with.
Mr. Mayor?
We're good.
Yes. Just briefly, I mean, I lived through this in my neighborhood, and Mr. Paul and I had several conversations, and I can tell you, the contractors, was a developer, was supervising, but the contractors were incredibly rude. They were incredibly rude to my neighbors. They threatened them. If you said anything to them, like, you're not supposed to drive your giant trucks through our neighborhood, they were horrible. And I commend Scott and his staff for getting with the developer and getting some control over it. But it's true. They just do whatever they want to do, and they really do not care. That was my impression.
your impression is exactly right.
And I will say Scott and Alan certainly worked a lot trying to keep these guys in line.
Obviously not Pataskala residents.
Well, I don't know, but I was threatened when I asked somebody to move their truck out of my driveway so I could get out, go to work, threatened, cursed at. So, yeah, that's what you have.
All right. Anything else? Kathy, do you have anything? I don't want to forget anybody. No. Okay, very good. Committee chair reports, ma'am.
We did have a development committee meeting tonight, but conversation has covered nearly everything that I would have to recap, so that's actually nice for a change. Scott, you should do that every time. You go right before me, and you just tell everybody what was. Yeah, so the subdivision regulations are coming along nicely. I did ask Scott to send out the packet, as I always do, that he gives to us, because he gives a really nice recap, or kind of a summary of everything we're going to talk about. I think it's beneficial for all of council to have. The RFQs, when are you guys getting together to look through those for the steering committee, or for the vendor, contractor, whatever?
I think we're still trying to determine a time we can all four sit down.
They're getting distributed to all the directors and myself, and this week is fairly busy. Then I'm out of town for the ICMA conference, so we're looking at not this coming Friday, the following, to get together and talk about our reviews of them.
So we'll have some sort of report at October 23rd council meeting?
The first meeting in November.
First meeting in November, because I'm just anxious to hear about the cost.
Yeah, I would say the first meeting in November, we'd have something.
Okay. And there was a park board meeting last Tuesday held in a classroom here at COTC. The park board has done a phenomenal job of laying out kind of a big picture of how they would advise us to use the money for the parks over the next 5 or 6 years. It's easy to understand. There's people posted it at every various stations numbered by years, 1, 2, 3. Very knowledgeable people to answer all kinds of questions. The only, thing is obviously turn out to the meetings. If we could get, that word out, and I would encourage council to encourage their ward members, if they speak to them, to attend one of the meetings so they can make an informed decision when they vote. There is a special meeting scheduled for October 31st at 7 p.m. at Fire Station 1. So there's another opportunity, so please encourage people to come out for those.
I think there's candy at that one too, by the way.
I'll bring candy.
There's candy at that one, so people should show up.
I'll help.
In costume.
Let's bribe them.
We could wear
any other
costumes.
committee chair reports?
I have one, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
On October 9th, the Utilities Committee met. Mr. Cooey gave you guys a kind of a brief outline, but I want to touch on it again. Tonight we're going to be voting on a change to capacity fees, and this has been a long time this was investigated for a long time by Mr. Cooey and everybody on the Utility Committee. We looked at a wide variety of things, everything ranging from how big certain lines going into a house might be, to professional standards, and then also what all the surrounding communities charge for their tap fees. In the end, the basic answer is everybody just kind of does it, and they try to settle on, I don't know, who knows what they settle on. What you see is people with more sewer debt have higher sewer tap fees, no surprise. And people that just build a water plant have higher water tap fees. I think in the end, the Utility Committee took Mr. Cooey's recommendation and tweaked it just a bit to stay within, we are not going to be the highest and not going to be the lowest when it comes to tap fees. We are only modifying the 3/4 inch line fee. And that modification is for the water to increase to 5,500 and the sewer to increase to 4,000. Is that correct? 4,500. I have it wrong. So we had we did make a recommendation that would be, now we're talking about when somebody obviously is building a house, or more specifically a developer is developing a housing development, what their 3/4 line into a house would be. So it's not necessary. We're not tinkering with rates yet, but we had a discussion about rates as well. We spent a little bit of time that council probably knows about talking about some budget initiatives. If you were at the last budget meeting, you heard Mr. Cooey talk about those budget initiatives and phosphorus removal and plans for places we may, what are we going to be doing with the next budget. We also had a conversation about our own city's relationship with Southwest Licking Sewer or Southwest Licking Community Sewer and Water District, and pretty much have come to a point where the district has informed us that they really think that they're going to send water to Fannin and Deagle, asked us if we would do sewer, and I think the consensus was yes. That's what we'll do if that's what you want to do. If that's a reminder to everybody that that's what was, well, water at least was determined by the arbitration. Thank you. That they would be able to service them with water, even though they are in the city of Pataskala, and Pataskala city residents would live there. But that was binding arbitration, and we cannot necessarily go against that. I had hoped we might be able to find another solution, but in the end, the utility committee said, if that's what you want, I think we're okay unless we hear something different. So I would always, as always, I invite my fellow utility committee members, if I miss something, please feel free to say something, but nope,
You got it.
pretty good. And that's all for my report.
So that's in the works, that's gonna happen, that's moving down the pike,
Which one?
the Fannin and Deagle.
Well, at this point, I believe that the Southwest Licking Sewer Water will have been told, or has been told, that we would be in agreement with providing sewer to the site, and it's up to them to get the water there, and they say that that's exactly what they want to do.
The district has been informed of that, as has the legal counsel for Fannin and Deagle.
Very good.
Stay tuned if anything changes, but so far I don't anticipate that being the case. Do you, Mr. Corey?
Okay. Any other committee chair reports? Seeing none, on to unfinished business. Ordinance 2017-4295, is there a interest in taking that off the table?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take ordinance 2017-4295 off the table.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hicken and seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion and roll, please.
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes?
Walther,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Okay, very good. Ordinance 2017-4295 for a third reading. Kathy, when you're ready.
Motion.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, never mind. I got ahead of myself.
we do need a motion and a second.
Yeah, to read it.
Okay.
We just took it off the
Ordinance
table, right?
2017-4295 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Hayes. Discussion and roll.
Are we? No,
Don't need a roll.
does she have to read it?
Both ways.
Okay, I'll take a roll, please.
Barstow,
Yes.
Lee, or excuse me, Hicken,
Yes?
Walther,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Okay, Kathy, when you're ready, third reading.
Mr. Mayor? Yes,
Ordinance.
real quick. Hey, Brian, since this is third reading and it still says in the title and declaring an emergency, does it need to be amended to remove that? We're on a third reading, so it's effective regardless.
Yeah, I don't think so because it'll. That's what I was going to say. It's going to take effect as allowed by the charter. So
Very good, thank you.
Kathy has an opinion.
I think the emergency would allow it to be effective immediately.
Yeah.
Without
Under
the
the charter, it would.
emergency, it would be 30 days.
30 days.
upon pass.
If we amend it, that's it for a fourth.
Right.
I would
You're only buying
recommend.
2 weeks.
I would, what's that?
You want to be buying 2 weeks.
Right, I would recommend proceeding as an emergency then.
You recommend what?
Proceeding as an emergency, so it can be, because it's been tabled.
The table for a
It
month.
has been sitting for a while.
Yes. So do it as an emergency so we can get it to ODOT and move forward.
Get it done.
Can we just read the darn thing?
Go ahead.
Yes, I can read it. Ordinance 2017-4295, this is the third reading, an ordinance appropriating 0.112 acres in fee simple, as well as 0.006 acre temporary construction easement in and on 5361 Mink Street, parcel number 063-144-630-00.000, located in the city of Pataska, Licking County, Ohio, for the construction of Mink Street and declaring an emergency.
That was reconstruction of Mink Street. Okay, discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2017-4295.
Got a motion to adopt?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Is there any need for a separate vote on the emergency?
So I was just going to say, I think there has to be. I think you have to actually suspend the rules so you can then pass it, adopt it as, yeah.
As an emergency?
Yes. I think you need a vote on the, I think you need
You
a
make a
motion to
motion.
suspend the rules and then a motion to adopt it.
Looking for a motion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I move that we suspend a portion of council rules in the charter so that this can, 2017-4295 can be passed as an emergency.
A motion.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Yes.
Walter?
No.
Carter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Back to the original ordinance for adoption. We've already went through, so just the roll, please.
Hickam?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Ordinance 2017-4296. Any
Mr. Mayor?
interest in taking that out? Yes, sir.
I'd like to take ordinance 2017-4296 off the table.
Okay. Mr.
Second.
And seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion on taking it off the table. Roll call, please.
Walter?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hickam?
Yes.
Okay. The motion to take it off the table has passed. Ordinance 2017-4296 for a third reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Kathy, when you're ready, third reading.
Ordinance 2017-4296, this is the third reading, an ordinance appropriating a 0.021 acre temporary construction easement on 6164 Mink Street, parcel number 063-142-410-00.000, located in the city of Pataska, Licking County, Ohio, for the reconstruction of Mink Street and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Barstow?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we suspend the appropriate or the applicable council rules and portions of the city charter so that this ordinance can be passed as an emergency.
Got a motion by Mr.
Second.
Barstow. So who seconded?
Me.
Mrs. Carter. Discussion on the motion. Kathy, when you're ready.
Powell?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hicken?
Yes.
Walter?
No.
Carter?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Back to the original ordinance for adoption.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I move that we adopt ordinance 2017-4296.
Got a motion by Mr. Barstow.
I second that.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Hayes?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hicken?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Ordinance passes. Ordinance 2017-4299 for a second reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion? I'm sorry. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2017-4299. This is the second reading, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Pataskala, State of Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2018, and to authorize approved interfund transfers.
Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a couple things. The first thing is I would be, because I never see you guys enough, all for another meeting, another budget meeting, to go over some of the details of this. We had some really productive conversation at the last one, and I think there's things that are not yet resolved. I think there's a couple things, in my opinion, that I would like for us to discuss removing from that. And I don't know if this would be the appropriate time to talk about that, or if we're going to go ahead and say we're having another meeting and we'll save it for that. So
I think we have another meeting and save all that for that discussion.
that's
So,
fine with me.
Point taken. Anything, Mr. Barstow?
No, I have no problem with having another meeting. It's just the question of when it's going to be.
Okay.
So we can
Mr.
have that
Walter?
discussion.
I echo that also, that another meeting, especially with BJ present, would be very helpful.
Yeah, we had a couple folks missing and then BJ without here, so yeah, to tie up all the loose ends, obviously we need to get another meeting, so we the last time, we just kind of sat around and picked a day and time, so I think we need to probably do that. We don't have, after this meeting,
November 6th is our next regular meeting.
and we have 2 Mondays in a row open, which doesn't happen a whole lot, the 23rd and the 30th.
But, Mr. Mayor, we have a streets meeting on the 23rd.
Okay.
So if we can avoid that, that would be great.
Okay.
And I won't be here on the 23rd.
Okay, so right now, 30th look pretty good?
Oh, it was also a nice little breakup to like do it on Wednesday or, a different day of the week that was.
Again, totally open, just throwing some stuff out there, so it doesn't have to be Monday night.
Whatever.
I'm pretty open.
Talk to me, folks.
30th's fine with
30th
me.
works for me.
30th. Everybody's looking at 30th?
Sure.
At 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock?
That works.
Close?
It depends on how early Judge Brandstole lets me leave. So I don't know.
Oh, and
Let's get started.
well, and I'll also say, we certainly have time still in the budget schedule if it needs to be after the 30th. I mean, whatever council wants to do with it, sooner the better. I anticipate there will be amendments made on the 6th or 13th, but we still have 2 months to go before it needs to be adopted.
If we pushed it to 6:30, or are you talking, it could be any time, though?
It's the first day. I don't know how late we're going to go. But I can schedule it. I'll get here as quickly as I can.
Okay. So the 30th at 6 o'clock, October 30th at 6 p.m. for a budget meeting. You can advertise that for us, or post that for us, Kathy?
You could send me a letter,
Well,
email me.
I'll email you, sure. I'll send you a letter, too. October 30th, 6 p.m. All right, very good. Any other discussion on 4299? Okay, resolutions, motions, new business. Ordinance 2017-4297 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2017-4297, this is the first reading, an ordinance to add chapter 719 to the codified ordinances of the City of Pataskala and repeal all other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict therewith.
Discussion. Ordinance 2017-4298 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2017-4298, this is the first reading, an ordinance to amend chapter 1211, chapter 1215, chapter 1255 of the codified ordinances of the City of Pataskala and repeal other ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict therewith.
Discussion. Ordinance 2017-4300 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready. First reading.
Ordinance 2017-4300. This is the first reading, an ordinance to amend section 929.03G of the codified ordinances of the city of Pataska.
Discussion? Okay, ordinance 2017-4301 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Hicken. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2017-4301. This is the first reading, and ordinance amending ordinance 2016-427 establishing the allocation of income tax collections received by the city of Pataska pursuant to ordinance 2010-3959.
Any discussion? Okay, on to resolutions. Resolution 2017-062, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to purchase property at 12778 Broad Street as part of the Mink Street and Broad Street intersection improvements project.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow.
I'll second.
And seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion? Mr. Walther.
Just a quick, I know, BJ, we've talked about this a little bit about the potential to get in there and do any kind of investigation on this house. I reiterate again the potential for environmental issues. Is there, I saw an auction sign go up in front of the house, I guess it was like this weekend. Have we explored at least that option to get in there? Can we do anything to see what the exposure will be to purchase this house?
It is being sold as is. Getting in and looking at it, no. The auction, it was scheduled as a fallback required by probate in case council did not authorize the purchase. Our options at this point are to proceed with the purchase. It was set at the probate appraisal was established at $75,000. They can't sell it outright for any less than that because of the appraisal, or not approving the purchase and going and hopefully getting it through auction.
Any other discussion?
One thing I will say, there are grant funds available in the grant for demo and
That was going
mitigation.
to be kind of my other side, and that was something I was going to ask, because I assume this was not included in the grant application originally awarded for that intersection.
There is money, go ahead.
There's a line item in the budget to
Okay.
Wow.
That's good news. That's very good news. Okay. Perfect.
But there's
So
still money
demolish
available
is,
that
but
could be
but
applied
like
to it.
We could amend our
lead
plan.
and all that
No
stuff
doubt.
is not.
Yeah, yeah, it would be covered.
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I guess I would have a real quick question. I want to make sure that I get this right. Probate has set the value. Somebody else has set the value at X,
5,000.
5,000.
Correct.
If we try to wait for that and try to get it cheap, anybody could possibly purchase it.
At auction, it could go for any price.
And then
Starting bid is 46 or 48 with
But then-
a 10% buyer's premium.
But then they could turn right around and that becomes the fair market price, whatever they paid for it.
Potentially.
Okay.
If somebody turned around and say bought it for $150,000 and we tried to say, hey, we either want to buy it or take it from you, well, certainly if it's through eminent domain, which I don't think any of us in favor of, you still got to pay fair market value.
Right. And then it's tied up forever.
Correct.
Forever.
For another year or so.
Yeah. So.
So my recommendation is move forward with purchase.
Yep. Any other input? Let's go. Kathy, whenever you're ready.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Very good. Resolution passes. On to motions. You got something ready for?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Mr. Jerry Truex and Mrs. Ann Rogers to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hicken and seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion? Yes.
I just want to say, in working with both of these people in the past for planning and zoning, they're excellent. They work well with the committee. But I also want to say, Mr. Howell, that the other application that came in for this two open spots is exceptional. So these three applications, or these three resumes, have been extremely good, and I'm hopeful that we can do another motion here immediately after to place Mr. Howell onto the BZA.
Okay. Any other discussion? And yes, thank you for your service and wanting to continue.
And your
I do
interest.
appreciate it. I like to hide behind there for some reason. Roll call, Kathy, please.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Congratulations, very good. Looking for another motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I move to replace Mr. Alan Howe, the open position on the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Got a motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion? And roll.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, sir, for volunteering and
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
you
Mayor.
good folks. Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Brian McGuire to the Parks Advisory Board.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Hicken, seconded by Mr. Walther. Discussion? And roll.
Hicken,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Very good. Congratulations, sir. Knowing your background and your passion with the Lions Club, I'm thrilled to have you there. So, yes, sir.
I will just say the terms that were just appointed will begin first meeting in January, so staff will be in touch with you to arrange getting sworn in during that time.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make one other mention, personally, myself. Good luck, Brian, because you're filling some big shoes. I won't tell her that I said that, but you're filling some big shoes.
Some pretty shoes.
Some pretty good,
Yeah,
good-looking
pretty
shoes.
good-looking shoes.
Usually.
Not big
So,
ones. All right, very good. Any other motions?
Can we take a crack at this?
Yes, please. Do you have something written up?
I do if you think you can read my scratch, or I might be able to suggest something, and then you could do whatever you want with that suggestion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask Mr. Zetz if he has a suggestion on the motion for the police dog.
Okay, I'll take that into consideration.
Yeah, just so we're going to have to name the officer because there's no way to do it without naming the
That's
officer.
fine.
So okay, I mean there will be no.
No, I think it's certainly okay to do that.
Yeah, I mean if it was me, I might make a motion to allow Officer Collis to foster the canine dog until it is sold at auction by the city or the city demands it be returned, conditioned upon agreement between the city and Officer Collis. It's acceptable to the administration and the verification of the insurance issues. I just
What he said.
what I would do.
Sounds like a lawyer wrote it.
It does.
I had a lot of time to think about it. We've been
Brilliant.
Should we have an effective date? Because since his last day is Saturday, any day after there is when this will take effect.
Effective October 21st.
October 22nd.
22nd.
Yeah.
22nd. Effective October 22nd.
Yes.
Well, you want to make that motion?
Yeah, I think I can.
Once your
I think
chicken
I can.
scratch.
We learned a secret, like code thing in law school, and so I can probably decipher it.
Can you pass that down?
And medical doctors.
good luck.
Holy
It's
crap,
that
another-
at the bottom.
Good heavens.
It's like a board game. It's like Clue.
You'll never be able to read it.
I don't think you're supposed to tell anybody that, Todd.
Todd's got a lot of pressure
Gonna
now.
lose his super secret ring now.
It's also hard to read because it's barely legible.
Get your decoder out, Todd.
No, I think I got it. So, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to allow Officer Collis to foster his canine dog until further action by council, or until council determines that the dog be returned to the custody of the city, or by auction, whether it's auctioned, or by agreement with the affected officer. And this would become effective on October 22nd of this year, pursuant to insurance verification that is acceptable to the administration.
Impressive.
Got a motion?
One-
Need a second?
Can I make a slight suggestion?
No.
Todd, you said his canine. It's the city's canine.
Well, I think I said the canine in his possession.
You said
City-
his
I mean,
canine.
the city's. I mean to say the
City's
city's canine that's currently an officer.
Correct.
Got a motion? Need a second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion? And roll, please.
Walter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Motion passes. Any other motions? All right, moving on. Additional citizens' comments. Anybody wish to speak? Your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, and anything that you talk about must pertain to what we have discussed this evening.
I think
I know this drill.
Okay.
Eileen DeRolf, 12520 Refugee Road, Pataska, Ohio. I would like to talk about the service dog. I think you've got 4 factors that you're looking at here: financial, safety, PR, and the welfare of the dog. And I think you have to balance all of those. Financially, if you, in essence, give this dog away, the next time you want to get a bunch of donations for the next dog, good luck. Secondly, safety. You will have 2/3 of your dog personnel. Now, if those dogs are here for safety, then I guess we're 2/3 is safe for things that the dogs need to function under. Welfare of dog. Yes, I've had dogs and horses for decades and decades and decades. Yes, I'm that old. And the reality is, they're pretty flexible folk. If he were an 8-year-old dog or 9-year-old dog, and no, I'm not a dog expert, but I've had my share of dogs, including pit bulls. And they, at that young age, I think this dog deserves a chance to stay in the protection of the city. Because if this dog is going to be just kind of put out there, you have no guarantee of the protection of this dog. I think you'd be better off to give him a chance to function with another police person in the city. You can always auction the poor sucker later, you know? So I just ask you, think this is an investment by the city, paid for by the citizens, trained on money paid for by the citizens, and he deserves to stay here, be protected here, and given every chance to fulfill the task he was purchased for. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll go roundy round. Start with you, Mrs. Carter.
I have nothing.
Okay, Mr. Barstow.
Well, just a couple of things to clarify on the Main Street issue. I don't want us to force people to do anything, but I think we need to move forward, and this is a problem that was left over from Stantec. It's a problem that's left over from Stantec, but this is a project we put a lot of money in, a lot of inconvenience. We need to get it finished, and we need to do it in the proper way. On the dog issue, I hear what Mr. Rolfe said, and I tend to agree, but I think the problem is that I don't think there's another city employee who can be the handler for this dog. I don't think we have another officer who's trained and waiting for a dog, so to speak. So, and we have to comply with the revised code, and so we're kind of stuck. But I hope we can solve this problem in the future, not have this problem again. Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Hicken?
Really quick, I'd like to thank the 4 individuals who volunteered to work tonight to spend some time, and some of them continue working, and some of them start working with the city. I'm very grateful for any time anybody's willing to step up and help out the city. I wanted to give a quick shout out to the 3rd graders at Pataska Elementary School who came in here last week and learned about government. And it was an absolute blast to talk to them. They are extremely excited about government, and I promised at least a couple of them I would say something at City Council about it. And other than that, I think I'm good.
Mr. Zetzke, anything?
Nothing.
Mrs. Hayes?
Thank you, everyone that came in tonight. It was fun to see Gage Markham, our pledge extraordinaire, in here, our scout. So it's always fun to see a former student come in. Love talking to Tim about the 3rd graders that came in, and I've seen a lot of them. I don't work at Pataska anymore. I work at Etna now. So to see a lot of the kids get off and transfer to buses, they were pretty excited about the day they spent with you. So I appreciate you doing that. And that's all I have.
Mr. Walter?
Just wanted to reiterate, the boards that we put together or that we nominate and put in positions, to go and watch them actually do their job for the city. They're put their time and effort into is pretty amazing. The BZA, the P&Z, all of them. If you go and watch them, they do a great job. And to have 2 come back and want to be on the board again is we can't thank you guys enough. So really appreciate it.
Very good.
And for the new ones, hope to see you in 4 years.
Mr. Powell?
Same thing. Thanks for your interest in continuing and wanting to start. By judging by your resumes and your experience already with the city, I think we're lucky to have you on board. So thank you. And
Mr. Powell, give your wife our best.
Yes,
She's a
and
little
thanks.
under the weather, and
everybody for your thoughts and prayers for my wife. She's at home, doing better. A little bit of a road ahead of us, but all in all, best outcome you could have hoped for. So
very good.
And with that, I move we adjourn.
Got a motion to
Second.
adjourn, seconded by Suzanne.
Suzanne's thirded.
Discussion.
I thirded it.
Discussion. Roll, please.
Carter?
Yes.
Yes.
Dees? Yes. Barstow?
Yes.
Hicken?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Put your seats down, please.
Meeting adjourned. You may now get up and move about the room and talk to people and get a drink of water and.
A little bit. The head council county clerk.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, they're right.
Yeah.
PG and I had the conversation.